What's up, guys? We got another game with the white pieces, and as you can see, it went pretty smoothly. 95.3% accuracy, just a nice smooth curve up, 2700 performance rating, and let's look at the game. It's against Montana 163, a 1950. Let's go. I open with one D4. He goes knight of 6. I go E3, preparing a possible stonewall structure. But he goes G6. So I don't go Stonewall into that. So I switch up my game plan and I go for the Cheesecake, Knight of 3. He fianchettos. I do the very simple Bishop E2, prepare to castle. He castles, I castle. Standard stuff. He goes D6, trying to play on the dark squares, King's Indian style. I go B3, preparing to fianchetto my own bishop to challenge his. He goes c5, attacking my center, attacking my dark squares. A common move is either c5 or e5, playing on the dark squares. He chooses c5. That's perfectly fine with me. I ignore it. There's no need to reactively take, which also walks into discoveries. I simply continue development, which is usually the right response. Now he takes. Now I recapture with my knight so as to leave this diagonal open. He develops his knight and challenges my knight in the center. I don't need to react. It's not hanging. I simply continue with my plan. What is my plan? To go c4. Now I have the center. Now I can develop my knight, my queen, and my rooks. And then see what happens. He thrusts with e5, which hits the knight. That's the threat. What are the consequences? Well, it blocks his bishop temporarily. It also weakens the d6 pawn square and the d5 square. And so you can take here because it's tempo, meaning he has to react and then you get a move. So that's always nice. But I didn't want to take. I also didn't want to go back home, which is probably fine. Instead, because he had just weakened this pawn, I decided to pressure it with knight b5. Double attack on the pawn, gaining the initiative, opening up my bishop, forcing him to respond. And there's not so many ways you can defend this pawn. I thought he might push, I wasn't sure. But how else do you really defend this pawn? There's 98, you can try to push. It's not so easy. So he goes 98 and this can never be, like, I can't be worse, right? So I just continue along my development plan. Knight d2. Don't know why I didn't go knight c3. Oh, because after he kicks this knight would lose its square. Yeah, that's why. Okay, and he does kick it, and now I do have a square. See? He develops his bishop. Does it threaten anything? No. Drawbacks. This pawn's looser. He also gets a little control of this. So now I have to come up with some type of plan. There's no real pawn breaks that I want to do. I want to just take advantage of these weaknesses. Mostly the mm, mostly the d5 square. So I'm looking. I'm pretty much developed. Queen c2 doesn't actually do anything, so I can get along with my ideas. How can I put a piece into the opponent's position or threaten something. I stick a piece into the position with knight to the center. Again, opening up this diagonal and occupying the d5 square. He goes knight c7, challenging that. He's threatening to win a pawn right now by take, take, take. I don't want him to win a pawn. I also don't want to. I could maybe defend my knight like bishop c3 and trade some stuff, but I figure my position's better and I can outplay him with more pieces on the board in a better position. So instead, I go knight b6. So hits the rook with tempo. It doesn't allow him to trade, and now his knight's still awkward. So he has to react, and now I get another move. So I'm thinking, how do I move my pieces forward and maybe attack something? I don't really have many moves. I have bishop f3 that meets that criteria, knight e4. So I choose knight e4 with a double attack on the d pawn. He goes back to e8, defending this pawn again. And now he's kind of been going back and forth. I got to improve my knights. And again, I'm thinking this move also hits the knight. There's no way to defend it, and I'm not going to go back here. So I go back here, which is fine, because now these knights look really strong. He trades, which makes sense. Now, if I take back with the pawn, it does hit the knight for one move, but that's all it does. After the knight goes back, he can play on the c-file, and I no longer have these weaknesses to target effectively. So I take with the queen, leaving these two open still, so that I can target them. He shifts his queen over to prepare extra defense of the weak point, which makes sense. Now I have two rooks that need to get in the game. So I move this rook and add a third attacker on this pawn. So naturally he defends, and now he has a third defender. So now I'm looking at my pieces thinking, okay, how else can I apply pressure? I can double, although that takes two moves. I can also improve this bishop, which is not doing much, and go here, adding an attacker in one move. And an extra benefit of this move is it prevents any knight b4s hitting the queen. Okay, so that's what I do, bishop a3. Now it adds a fourth attacker. He can't defend it again, so he goes knight e7, hitting the queen. Yes, I can't currently take the pawn because my queen is hanging, but all I have to do is drop my queen back, and there are still four attackers on this pawn. And this controls this square, so there's no weird stuff. So he lashes out with f5, hitting the knight, I guess resigning himself to losing this pawn, or thinking there are tactics down the d-file since my queen is here. I accept it, accept his challenge, and I take the pawn. He trades once. I take with the bishop. And now he goes queen c6 because his queen was hit. And now the bishop looks pinned. And it's hit twice. So on his next move, let's say he attacks it a third time. I won't be able to defend it a third time except with c5. I guess c5 makes sense. Basically, if you move your queen to get out of the pin, the bishop is hanging. And I guess you could try to work c5 into the other lines, but I immediately got out of it with the one move that lets you get out of it, queen b4, still defending the bishop. And I don't think he saw that move because it doesn't just defend the bishop like c5 would, but it also comes with this super threat down this diagonal. So because he's going to lose material, and he knows he's going to lose material after this move, he takes the bishop. He probably thought I was going to take with the queen. He would trade. He would push the pawn and try to hold that position. Um, but that's not what I did because I took with the rook, hitting the queen. I saw the queen didn't have any good squares. It would have to go back somewhere, and I would get a free doubling, and I'm just completely destroying this guy's position. So he moved back, and I immediately double, and now I'm threatening rook d7. So he moves his knight and hits my queen, so I don't have time for any of that. But what do? I go queen c5. I go a little bit closer, also threatening this check to with the infiltrate with the queen down the light squares. Right now that it's open, a worse move would have been going back. It also pins the knight. The knight cannot move because the queen is hanging. So there's some interesting stuff going on. My position is way better. He goes here with the bishop. I'm guessing he sees this alignment and wants to win material. It doesn't work because I always have a check, and I just do the check now. I felt like it was an improvement to my position to have my queen here. And I thought he was going to move his king away, but he blocked with the rook. Can you spot the winning move for white? Okay, hopefully it shouldn't take you long. This rook is pinned. Therefore, this bishop is loose. So I take it. And he resigns. And his lack of doing Puzzle Rush increases our rating to 1977 with a 95% accurate game. See that? Look at that. How nice. Such a smooth game. Just a little bit of maneuvering, taking control of his weaknesses, attacking his weaknesses, not falling for any shenanigans, winning a pawn. With this move, Giga Chad winning a piece. And then just positional domination. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, 1977. We're almost there. Let's keep going.